Okay, so again, the title of this final panel is Robots and Automation. It's going to be hard to top what we just saw from Edward Peters, but we're going to leverage that accordingly. And then we're going to factor in Tiffany and Veena. But before we get started, let's just do some quick, very quick self-intros. Veena.
Okay, I'm the CDO at NeuroRehabVR. We create virtual reality therapy exercises for cognitive and physical therapy for neurological rehabilitation. And we have a backend system where we collect data from the sessions that the patients are at and try to quantify their progress too. And our mission is to bring down cost of therapy and make it more efficient and within the reach of everybody who really needs it so that they can get to their optimal recovery process.
Hello, everyone. Tiffany Ricks, founder, CEO, and what I like to joke and say, I'm the chief hacker at Hacware. I started my career 15 years ago as a software engineer, so I've been in the software industry for about 15 years and spent my career building software, cybersecurity solutions, and AI solutions for the Department of Defense, so the Army, the Navy. And what we do at Hacware is a artificial intelligence driven product that identifies employees that will get email hacked. So it uses artificial intelligence to predict those insiders that will get hacked. It will predict the time in the future that this most likely would happen. And it will automate sending a phishing message to the employees to hack them. And then we provide analytics on training on how to protect their organization from getting email hacked. So, Tiffany Ricks, looking forward to talk to you all more about automation and robotics.
Ed Peters, probably talked about myself too much already. CEO and founder of Data Discovery Sciences. Spent a lot of time in and out of academia, running consulting businesses, as well as senior roles in large corporations. Spent a lot of time trying to build better outcomes through intelligent automation and explaining to people the pros and cons of emerging technologies. For instance, I spent, 20 radio interviews 2 weeks ago across the Fox network, as well as Westwood One, talking about facial recognition in law enforcement. The pros, the cons, and how you should think about it.
Okay, terrific. So since Ed did just a phenomenal job, he took my number one question and just blew right through it, which is all about what's the difference between automation and AI, and which is phenomenal. So we have that basis. So I'm going to plunge right in to the next question, which is how AI and robotics will redefine jobs rather than eliminate them in the short term. But I want to pop out some statistics to calibrate everybody here, and then we can go into a level of detail with the panelists. So through the research I've done, as many as 45% of the activities individuals are paid to perform currently can be automated. And in the US, these activities represent about $2 trillion in annual wages, okay? So, and now if you add natural language understanding to the equation, that's an additional 13%, okay? So although we often think of automation primarily for the low-skill, low-wage jobs, it's also the highest-paid occupations, such as financial managers, physicians, senior executives, right, will be impacted. Although I still think that's going to be more augmented intelligence that we talked about. So for sure, automation is definitely going to change the vast majority of occupations to some degree, and it's going to result in a lot of job redefinition. Okay, some of the slides that I put up, what Edward was talking about, and it's a transformation of the current business processes, right? So, but keep in mind the activities that humans do. So if your job is procedural, yes, that is a higher propensity for automation. So the key thing is getting into non-procedural, which requires tacit knowledge, and that's difficult to translate into into RPA, what Edward's talking about. So I just want to open up kind of broad-based, and then we'll get a little more granular with comments off those stats from each panelist. Who wants to jump in first?
Yeah, let me follow up. I had the pleasure a few years ago at a conference of hearing Peter Diamandis speak. Now, he's one of the founders of the Singularity University Institute, along with Ray Kurzweil and a few other people. And he got up at a conference that was mostly, it was a lot of physicians. And he said, how many of you are family physicians? They raised their hands. He goes, you have about 6 years, and this goes away. You're out of business. Why? What's the first thing you do when you're sick? What do you do? Who do you ask about it? What do you look for to figure it out? Dr. Google, right? You don't call your physician. You look at Dr. Google. And based upon that, now you ask an intelligent question about what you may or may not have. So now you think about this. Someone's gone through 4 years of med school. They're expecting that as a family practice, they're going to charge you $100 and some for your visit. Well, what if you take that and you give Dr. Google and other better focused products to a physician's assistant? Now what? You just now drop the cost to from $100 a visit to about $40. And now you've improved affordability of healthcare. So across a whole range of things, again, taking the robot out of the person, increasing the skill of the trained person to deliver a service is going to have a dramatic effect on work and how it's performed.
And I'll piggyback off of that. I think when we talk about the future, like where is automation going to have a key role, it is going to be for those skilled professionals taking away some of those tasks that can be automated so they can really focus on their expertise and really do what they have been trained to do. So case in point, a lot of my references will be coming in about, will be centered around cybersecurity. So in cybersecurity, these are skilled professionals, and they're here to protect organizations from getting hacked. Well, in 2024, we're going to have 3.5 million jobs available that need to be filled. So we already have skilled professionals who have a lot of work to do, and now in the future demand for their skill set is going to be higher, and so they need automation to keep up with the demand. And so a lot of artificial intelligence comes into play with, there's a lot of data associated with the work that they're doing already, trying to figure out how you can make inferences. And so a lot of hackers, so there's a lot of cybersecurity work is about vulnerabilities and trying to understand where the holes are in an organization to prevent that from happening. And so just trying to figure out how you can use artificial intelligence to identify, to make those inferences and automate the work for those professionals is where I spend a lot of my time and have spent my career. And then also when we think about the Department of Defense. So the Department of Defense, again, with security and surveillance being at a high point, there's a lot of need for these individuals, but not enough people to fill those roles. And so what they're trying to do is trying to figure out a way where they can use artificial intelligence to automate a lot of those unnecessary tasks so they can make the most impact out of utilizing their people. So I think in the future, it's going to be it's not going to be a lot of jobs taken away, although I've seen a McKinsey report where they said between 73 million to almost 800 million jobs are going to go away. I don't know if that is going to be the case, but I really see that we're going to be using automation to fill in the gaps and to really try to work with the employment gaps that we have and using technology to support those individuals.
I was going to start with the Google idea, but then I read about it in this book called Naked Statistics, and one of the things that it said was people tell Google that they wouldn't tell the doctors. So you can do better if you have that data. Google can actually give you better diagnosis than a doctor would, because you actually tell Google all your symptoms. Other than that, coming from the physical therapy point of view that we work with, our therapists spend about 15 to 20 minutes a therapist session writing notes. And I'm sure that happens a lot in every doctor clinic or visit that you go for. That's something that could be automated with actual quantitative data than the subjective data that they put in right now, especially with EHRs coming up. You can have an aggregate data from every part, from their cardiopulmonary efficiency to their brain to cognition to the physical therapy part. That's one. And I was at a conference called the Boomer Summit. One of the things is there's a lot of people who are going to retirement. It happens to be 10,000 per day right now, and all these the ones who are going to senior care livings, they're struggling with workforce. There's not enough people to take care of seniors at these places. So they're trying to automate as much as they can. And one of the companies that was there was called Toy Labs. I think it was really good. What they do is you have a little sensor in your toilet that takes pictures of your business that you do in there. So this is done by the people, the caregivers. They go in and they do what they call the BM logs every morning, and which is, it could be automated much better. It's very time consuming and they don't want to do it, but now if there's something wrong with somebody's tool, they will get to know that quickly and they can do something about it. So there are a lot of ways that it can, the senior care living caregivers can work on things that an automation, you don't need automation for, and make them more efficient.
Yeah, I wanted to come back to that. Actually, I want to come back to it right now since you're talking on it. This whole notion of aging populaces, Japan is probably aging the fastest there, and that's why they're so big into the robotics. When actually one of my former engagements, I didn't mention this in my presentation on augmented intelligence come future of work, is using digital avatars, okay, in healthcare. In fact, one of the projects in Australia with Soul Machines was to create these empathetic digital agents, and that will be companions, and this is meant to augment healthcare workers where the turnover and the stress is just enormous. And with 10,000 baby boomers, I'm not quite there yet, are retiring, every year up until like 2025. This is going to be significant. And there's also a play that Veena and I talked, in rehab as well. Veena, you want to pick up on that?
Yeah, sure. That's one thing. At first we thought robots can emulate empathy, and that's something big when you're especially working with senior care or somebody who's had a brain injury whose emotional behaviors can go up and down. But we've seen that when people are in a virtual world, they're so immersed in it, they actually react to the avatars and talk to them as they would in real life. And depending on, we are able to do things like, depending on how you interact with the avatar responds, creating that empathy and trust building with the avatar itself. And that's amazing for somebody who's working on cognitive or behavioral therapy, because now they trust this person, this avatar. There are other companies that are trying to do virtual therapy inside of VR using, so you still have a clinician who's talking through you to an avatar, and the patient is talking through an avatar, and from research, it's shown that people actually talk more and reveal more things to a virtual avatar versus to another real person. So that's been really good for psychiatrists and psychological therapy too.
Right. So Ed, I want to come back to you off your presentation regarding, taking the robot out of humans. And I had a slide up in my presentation I'm going to peel back to. In the AI age, machines will emerge as the top collaborators. And these are just for refreshing, this is the stat I put up. 20 to 35% of value-added collaboration comes from just 3 to 5% of employees. And then the other metric was 60% of executives are struggling to keep the workforce current. So when you combine that with the other statistic of 90% of management, trust-wise counsel, what do you see as the implications there? Is that correct, Red?
One of the issues that Teresa Wellborn talks about is the amount of learning and collaboration that people do. And as you mentioned, because so many organizations today have a high amount of people who are only focused on tasks and then go home, what happens is their engagement is very low to that 3%. Now, when you start getting, again, you're automating out all the robot in the person, and the people that you now have in your organization, this whole issue of how do you help automate collaboration and engagement starts to become very valid. For instance, there's outrageously interesting statistics about how little information physicians actually read about medical research and what's changing and breaking on their environment. Most of them get it from the baseball game that their drug rep takes them to, so they can hear about what the advances are in the pharmaceutical side. They really don't get a lot of time for that level of reading and study and research. Anybody ever go to a resort over a holiday when there's some medical practitioner conference going on? You ever do that?
Yeah.
Right, and what do you see? Here's the room where the conference is, and there's a slide projector doing a slide to an empty room. Because they're all out skiing or something else, right? Right? No, by the way, frankly, that's what they do. And I wouldn't blame them, right? There's really not a lot happening there. It's almost like going to an academic conference, right? Where somebody says, here's the next paper. Are there any of the authors here? No? Okay, next. Especially mathematical conferences, trust me. And it's in Hawaii and nobody in that room, except me and Guido and a couple guys who are nuts. But what you find out is that they don't get to keep up. So now you have the ability, using search with Google, things of other search engines, and a collaborative engine to start providing them with a synopsis of the research and what it means to their practice. And so now you've engaged them in some kind of collaborative environment, and everything can start to improve. But just as it is, imagine, they have to go spend the time to read through the journals. Oh my God, you can't, the way the research is increasing, you can't possibly even begin to keep up with it. And what happens when humans can't keep up with things? They stop, right? They just stop. Physicians, anybody else, they stop. And so now this is the first chance I think we'll have to do something interesting and re-engage people to be able to absorb this in a way they can apply it.
Exactly. Good stuff. Tiffany, I want to come back to you now regarding a couple of points. One of them, of course, is on cybersecurity, where it seems like it's AI against AI with the humans as like the co-pilot. And the second one, which you read about, which is pretty scary, is attacking infrastructure, our electrical power grid, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. And so the question is regard to how cybersecurity, and I'm still trying to figure out what the question was.
The question is it more of a one-upmanship in terms of the sophistication of the AI, in terms of, defending against intrusion, how sophisticated that's really escalating to?
Yeah.
And the second one is, are we paying enough attention to protecting our infrastructure, power grid, et cetera? And what are we doing more?
Yeah, I think really when we talk about it's based on the data. And that's one thing that with artificial intelligence and cybersecurity, a lot of us are trying to figure out how do we get the most reliable data to be able to build our models on and be able to really be able to predict a vulnerability before it actually happens. Right. And so I know there's a lot of, there's not much collaboration, which I'm looking forward to when we get to a point where there is more collaboration, because if we can all put together more data about the threat vectors that are out there, then we can better protect ourselves from a potential vulnerability. And so
collaboration between who? What's not happening?
So what's not happening is, so all of us are so with, I was just speaking to one of my general counsels who is with Trend Micro, and so he was saying, yeah, we have, at Trend Micro, we had one of the largest threat vectors as far as data. And so we prided ourselves on having this information, and that gave us a competitive advantage from a lot of our other competitors. And so, yes, it's great for Trend Micro, but we're talking about cybersecurity is impacting businesses all over the world, every industry. And so it's more of we're operating in silos because, yes, from a business standpoint, it's good, but A lot of our competitors are also actually hackers that are also using artificial intelligence to hack into these organizations. And so they do a lot better in collaborating on the dark web, on what they're finding, and building up data sets on a malicious side. But when we are on the side of the white hat hacking side and really trying to protect from those malicious organizations, we're doing a bad job on trying
So
to...
I see what you're saying. So in other words, there's not enough cross-collaboration
Well, it's
between
not
these
enough
communities
close.
then?
Yeah, between these communities. And I think that would, when we talk about artificial intelligence becoming more intelligent and really trying to protect these organizations, it really relies on the data and trying to figure out how we can share that information
exactly.
across.
So let's move to, has anybody heard the term Cobots? Cobots? Yes. So do you feel Cobots is, humans working with machines and, not just them, humans being subservient to robot bosses. But I think let's start with Ed on this, in a lot of, applications, this is like perfect then.
No, I think what we're going to see is what I call a blending of human and robots working together. Now, not in the Ray Kurzweil singularity, I'm going to have a chip here and, we're going to blend ourselves. But I think what we're going to find is, for instance, there's tasks where, humans and robots together, processing data, like again, in the collaboration sense. The robot is able to tell me, or that we've designed, and the AI tells me just what the possible clinical pathways are with somebody's disease. And now I may be asking questions about that to the robot. And the robot can quickly go out and come back and answer my questions because I've now presupposed what the human's going to ask, my patient's going to ask me, so I can go through a series of triage questions. Now, I'm smarter working with the robot to go out and work with the patient. Now, whether we bring the patient in to actually speak with the robot, I don't know. Again, you're talking about trust. That's a whole other step you'd have to take. But the question is anything where the robot and the AI can augment the human in doing their job, the better. We do that today, but at a much lower level.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And I just want to read you a couple of bullets. It's a nice article, Dispatches from the Front Lines of Human-Robot Collaboration. And it will be perfect, it'll be manifest. Human and robot complement when they come together because abstract tasks are performed by humans, then amplified by the AI's quantitative insights, to your point. Humans tackle the creative, the strategic, the intuitive, emotional, which is logical, where AI is good at communication, what it's doing. So as I had a quote, in my slide decks, alluding to Peter Drucker's thinking, efficiency should be delegated machines while humans should be effectiveness should be human pursuit. And humans are not good at all not knowing as well. So, agree, disagree, other comments, Veena?
I guess piggybacking what he said, robots can do and have other senses that we don't. We just have 5 senses, but then imagine a robot with infrared can detect heat. So it's kind of being used in a hospital setting where you have a robot that can walk through the hospital and see where, there's an area where there's more dust or some kind of infection that's coming up, and then go tell the janitor you need to clean this spot up, instead of the janitor going through the whole hospital and doing it. And then coming back to the engagement piece of things that you spoke about, it's not just engagement with workers, it's engagement with our patients. They do not want to do physical therapy. They do it just because they're there and they have to get it done. But our whole goal is to augment that such that they never feel like they're doing physical therapy, and that we can do that using AI and dynamic virtual environments, and make the whole process better for physical therapists and for the patients. And coming back to the research part, where there's so much research happening in physical therapy and neurological rehabilitation, but there's a disconnect between the researchers and the physical therapists who actually are working with the patients. With us being in this scene, my engineers and I are constantly reading research papers to find standardized tests that we can implement into what we do, so that the therapists have better information, and there's the standardized way of doing evaluation, because depending on where you go to, your evaluation of what your physical therapy has to be all depends on the therapist that you're working with. So it's a hit or miss. They could be good or they could be bad, and they could put you on a therapy plan that is really bad for you. But if you can take all of this data and there's a robot that tells you this is what you have, or an AI that tells you this is the therapy plan that you have to do depending on all the historic data and the standardized tests that you went through.
Right. So before we turn it over to Q&A, since it's the last session here, I have one more talking point to talk about, which I brought up in my presentation on augmented intelligence. For this to really happen, you need emotion AI embedded within the robots, period. That will give, the assessing human behavior. In fact, there's new algorithms. Brown and Tufts just came out with an algorithm that teaches robots human etiquette to help display appropriate social behavior. The emotion detection today, it isn't just all about facial recognition. The new, fact that at CES this year, I was invited by a Russian company to be the subject matter expert for multimodal emotion AI. So it's getting all the modalities. It's at the vision, hearing, touch, can detect your heartbeat, and that's really the new way forward. So when you embed that, and then you have the intersection of vision and language, which comes, allowing, because right now you have the vision, but you don't have the language. So you need the fusion of them to be able to navigate, in a real-time environment. One of the use cases was this Russian company is deploying these Cobots in airports as guides, to get information on the fly rather than trying to find the information desk. So just last comments on this question, then we'll turn it over. Really not a question, but just observations, and then we'll turn it over to the audience.
So I think you hit a great point when you talked about the vision, but also the language. So so natural language processing has come a long way, but it has a long way to go to really, and really what I'm talking about is the sentiment analysis. So being able to understand the emotion, the emotion in language, and understand the full context, and really then process, and then for the robot to be able to respond potentially using the same sentiment, or just really trying to understand the sentiment. So I think the way what I'm looking forward to is the natural language, and really trying to fully understand and have empathy and understand how people are communicating. So that's my thoughts and what I'm looking forward to. I think facial recognition is great, and it's an important piece, but also the language is a super important piece.
Ed?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to when the robot really pisses me off just kicking it across the room, right? Because you can't do that to somebody who's a human. And what I mean by that is, I'm sorry, I'm a jiu-jitsu guy. I gotta let it out. But what I mean by that is there's a long way to go here between the context of a robot really understanding what I mean, yes, and being able to respond. Mm-hmm. And now they're rolling these out in airports, for instance, and they're I refuse to use these things simply because, they're frustrating, and I don't have time to be frustrated by a machine. All right, and let's be, there's now this, we have to be nice to machines. What, are you kidding? It's a machine. Who's nice to their car when it won't start? Right, folks, it's a machine. I don't care what it does, it's a machine. And the answer is, machines do some things very well, and some things not very well. And when it comes to understanding context, why I'm asking the question, what it is I really want to do, I'm not very hopeful right now. Now, over time, for instance, this may improve a lot. But the biggest failure so far in this that I've read about is out in Irvine, California, they rolled out a robot machine into a hospital to tell the patient they were dying, and they had no choice. Yeah. And the guy, they went crazy. That's right. They had every right to smash the machine, frankly. Just like the famous, picture in in the Apple commercial, right, where the woman running throws the hammer, through the screen. Same idea. Look, this all, again, like the great thing, this is not new. The guy who wrote about this decades ago was Isaac Asimov, when he wrote I, Robot. And what impressed me about that book was the humanity that the robot showed. Well, we're a long way from that. And until we get there, right, I'm not exactly hopeful or willing to really fool around with any of these things, unless I want to amuse myself. Right? So that's my view.
Veena, you get the last word?
Okay. Yeah, I guess other than augmenting, having speech, we could, if somebody's in the virtual world, we can get their body movements too. And that's something that we can use to figure out, are they agitated? Are they calm? And then your virtual avatar kind of responds according to that. So if you were in my talk in the morning, we are trying to add in animals that with neural networks that will behave in the way that an animal would do in the real world. So if you go and are calm and to a deer, they'll let you pet it, but then it'll run away if you do not. So this way, the person can figure out the behavioral changes that they are going through so that they can understand what they're doing and correct it in the virtual world that way, and make therapy better than somebody yelling at you or telling you sarcastically that you need to calm down.
Excellent. So with that said, we'll open up the questions. Right here.
Yeah, I don't have a question, just a comment around
Okay.
talking about robots and maybe increasing the emotional intelligence and compassion. Robots never really understand us, as we understand each other and relate to from an emotional perspective. I think some research that needs to be done, though, is from a cultural norm perspective, because what maybe some people in this room think is a compassionate response may not be true in other cultures as well. So I think as we get into advancing this whole conversation about robotics and emotional responses, I think we definitely need some research in that space too. I don't foresee that what we do practice over here in the United States may be appropriate in some Japanese cultures around death and things like that. So I think that's definitely a field that people like yourself and people in this room we need to advance and look at too from those cultural norms perspective. So.
Oh, you're right. In fact, even in facial, I'll just give you an example to your point. So most of the facial detection algorithms are based on facial animation coding system, which does not take into account the cultural differences. So some of the advanced engines that are coming out, even this Russian company, are addressing that. So next question. There we go.
So I blame Netflix and Redbox for killing the video rental industry, the video rental stores that are like Blockbusters and Hollywood Videos. And thousands of people are out of jobs. But when I think about it, when I go to my local library, things like that, I think, do these people really need to be here for me to check out my books or make selections? And there's also online libraries where you could get e-books and you can rent videos and things like that. So really, are these librarians really useful or necessary for a library to operate? And I think the answer is no, right? And you can think about other areas where people are not necessarily needed and it could be fully automated. And so that leaves a lot of people without jobs that are on the lower tier. And what do you do with people who are not going to be doctors? They're not going to go to college. They're not thinking about anything beyond high school. We have to think of a different way of educating them, right? And I don't know how that would be influenced. I'll say one more thing. I have students who can't do anything without a calculator. They always need a calculator because that's kind of their AI assistant on the side, right? They can't multiply. They can't divide without a calculator in their hand, right? They can't do anything. Are we going to be like that later? Are we going to move into a society where we can't even do small things that even 20 years ago people could do by themselves without any need of any assistance?
Yeah, so I'll take that. There's a number of good issues there, and that's why I pointed some statistics. The retraining effort, where 60% of corporations are struggling to keep their company, their employees engaged. That's a huge effort there. There's the education effort, for sure. And there's also things like universal basic income that, some countries, or one of the candidates has been talking about that. So these are all kind of multiplexed together, and these can't be kind of like skirted away. We need to start addressing them for sure. Any other comments? Yeah,
I can talk about it a little bit. Obviously the training efforts have to go up from what it is right now, instead of just having video tutorials or something that you just watch and learn. But since I'm in the VR, AR space a lot, there's augmented reality training coming up. So if you want to train somebody, they can just have the AR headset on, and or VR headset, they're actually performing, learning and also performing a task with their hands. So they're also working on muscle memory and also cognitive training. And it's shown that there's really good training transfer from the virtual world to the real world. So that's one way to make it more engaging and train people faster when they get into a workforce. And Walmart just started to do that. They deployed about, I think, 500 to 1,000 Oculus Go headsets into their training centers, so that everybody in each location is trained the same way, so that it's done in a standardized way.
So I'll just mention the piece about the shift. So we talk about we don't have blockbusters and we don't have Hollywood videos, and librarians, we really don't need them anymore. But I feel like we need to make sure we have innovation, but we don't lose community. And so when we had the blockbusters and we had the Hollywood videos, we had more community where people were getting together and experiencing other people. And so with the library, I think, yes, in other jobs, you're going to have to shift and train up on a different skill set, but I don't think it is good for us to have facilities where there's totally no humans around, because people are built to have connection, and they need community. And so I really feel like a great balance for us in the future is to figure out how we can make things more efficient, more seamless for people, but also create ways where they can still have that community and human interaction with actual humans.
I'll follow up on that. I think we need to think about now what it means to be human. I don't know that anybody was born to code Medicare claims, right? But if you look at the matrix that I showed earlier, the idea is everything above the midpoint line is about interacting and connecting. The great philosopher and Leuven professor, Teilhard de Chardin, said our only reason as humans is to connect. Right? Now, the more the machines do the robot work, the more the need for connection is, the more we can start to now work with each other to make a community and a real human environment, and start to approach each other not about the thing that we do because, boy, I'm really good at processing math. No, it's about how we connect as humans. And I think that's going to be the next challenge. And especially if it's true that we're going to be able to produce so many things abundantly, now the price is going to be dropping. If you look at Diamandis' book, Abundance, there's a whole progression we go through, and the last one is from digitization, dematerialization, to demonetization. Think about what's happened on the internet and information. What starts to happen is now we have the ability to think of things very differently. Your point about libraries. I can't imagine being the helpfulness of a librarian to help show you what you need and understand the context of somebody who's a 14-year-old young woman when she says something about, healthcare, to ask a question and then guide her with that connection to something. Maybe we have the chance now to actually improve as humans and rediscover what we are to each other.
On that point, fantastic way. We can go on and on and on, but we're already 10 minutes over. So I want to thank the panelists for a terrific discussion. And in my closing comment, I want to thank Sunny and Amanda over here. A shout out to putting together a terrific conference. Really, really well done.